What's up guys, Tejas here from 11 Gauge Recordings and welcome back to the channel. This is kind of an exciting one as I'm going to show you guys how I go about mixing the Mridangam, which is an Indian classical percussion instrument. The example that I'm going to be demonstrating with is the song Tamasat by the band Project Mishram. This is kind of an older one. They have a new song released after this, which I did also mix myself. I chose this song because it has a mridangam in it, and it's a great demonstration to show you guys how I went about recording and mixing. Before I get into the whole session and talk about how I processed it, I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole recording process. So I'll try to put a picture somewhere here. So from what I remember, I used the Rode NT2A, which is this mic right here, for the left side of the instrument, which is basically the side that has a little more low end. And I use the SM7B for the right side of the instrument, which is the more dominant side and has a little more high end. The reason I use the dynamic for the part that has more high end is because the SM7B is a dynamic mic. It'll have a little more control over the transients, and I don't need to keep an eye constantly to control the gain. The Rode I use on the left side so I can capture a little more of the low, mids and lows. But on the mix, I realized that I don't need a lot of the low end from the instrument because, as you can see, this is quite a dense mix. It has drums, guitars, bass, all of that stuff. It's basically a metal mix which has the mridangam in it. The mridangam player isn't exactly playing a solo here. It's kind of adding a bit more excitement to this part of the song to add that Indian classical element to the song. So it's not exactly the dominant instrument or the main instrument here. So all it's doing is adding a bit of excitement. I didn't need a lot of low end from it because the low end is coming from the bass and the kick drum. So let's just get into it, and I'll show you guys how it sounds on its own and how I went about processing it. So basically there are two mridangam tracks, which is the Rode and the SM7B. Both are panned to the center. I didn't pan it to the left and right. Both of these tracks go into the percussion group, which has a few plugins. It also parallelly goes to another aux, which is the parallel group, and it also goes to a reverb group. Just mute the parallel and the reverb group, and also take out the plugins from the group so that you guys can hear how it sounds dry. I'll then bring back the plugins one by one so that you can see how I went about processing and my thought process behind processing the mridangam. I'm going to even remove this high pass that I've added on the Rode to remove everything under 100 Hertz. I'm going to inactivate that. Show you guys how the track sounded on its own. Let me show you how the Rode track sounds on its own with all of that low end. Alright, and the 7B track. Alright, and both together with the high pass on the Rode. So you see, if I remove the Rode, it lacks a little bit of that thump from the mridangam. Now let me start adding the processing on the group itself. So I start everything off with my virtual mix track, which has a Neve style EQ and a compressor. Let me play it first with the plugin on, and then I'll remove both of them and bring them in one by one. I'm going to remove both of them and bring them in. First the EQ, and then next the compressor. So the EQ is taking out a lot of the low mids, the dirty low mids, the very muddy low mids, and the compressor is kind of enhancing a bit of those transients and bringing them out a bit more. I also added a limiter to control the transients a bit more. Lastly, I've added GST clip. Let me take out the GST clip and I'll bring it back in again. Alright, and let's now move into my parallel bus, which is basically doing a ton of compression and a ton of clipping. So let me just add the parallel signal along with my actual Mridangam group and show you guys what that group is actually doing to the original group. I'm going to play the tracks without the parallel bus and then bring it in while the track's playing. So if you guys notice, I hope you guys are wearing headphones or listening on a pair of monitors though. So what this whole parallel bus is doing for me is bringing up a lot of those high-end transients of the right side especially, and it kind of gives you the feeling that the player's playing harder than he actually is. So let me play that again for you guys, and you guys can listen for that. I'm going to play it without the parallel bus first. Bring that in. So it does feel a lot more stronger, right? The transients. Let me play just the parallel bus for you, which will be very overly compressed. I've used the SSL style EQ for this and the clipper. This is going to sound very bad on its own, but with the mix is going to sound awesome. Just overly compressed, right? But both together sounds great. If I remove the parallel bus, it just loses a lot of intensity and force. And lastly comes the reverb bus, which is again just a lot of reverb. On its own, when the mridangams are soloed, it sounds like way too much reverb. In the mix, it kind of blends in a lot more. So I've used the Waves R-verb on this. I removed a lot of low end and high end. This is with the reverb bus. Alright, so let's just bring the Mridangam back into the track and let's see how that sounds with everything else. So I hope you guys understand what I was going for. The Mridangam is adding a lot of excitement to this part, and I wanted the right side to be heard more, the brightness from the right side to be heard more. That's how I went about mixing it. You can check out the full song in the link below in the description. I'll see you guys in the next video.